In this podcast episode, Lyman Stone, Simone Collins, and Stephen J. Shaw deliberate extensively on the multifaceted crisis of falling fertility rates worldwide. They explore the demographic, social, cultural, and economic impacts of sustained low fertility, particularly in industrialized societies. The conversation journeys through topics such as the mechanics of birth rate decline, its implications on society and the economy, the interplay between gender dynamics and reproduction, the role of culture and lifestyle in family formation, and the effectiveness of various policy responses. Personal perspectives and anecdotes intertwine with data-driven insights to illuminate why fertility decline matters and what might be done about it. The core of the discussion highlights a startling demographic reality. Pervasive fertility decline is sweeping across the globe, with countries like the U.S. recording historic lows. Projections indicate that by 2100, only a handful of countries will maintain replacement-level fertility. For instance, nearly 40% of women in the U.S. are expected never to become mothers. The speakers emphasize that small declines in fertility rates, when sustained across decades, translate into rapid halving of future birth cohorts and dramatic population shrinkage. This cascading drop threatens societal stability, economic vitality, and cultural continuity. The experts articulate that these trends are not ephemeral or isolated, but result from long-running structural and reproductive dynamics shared across diverse societies over the past 50 years. These dynamics supersede localized causes like housing costs or economic downturns and point to more profound shifts in cultural norms, pairing patterns, and life priorities. The panel draws parallels between shrinking populations and the hollowing out of communities as seen in cities like Detroit, where infrastructure built for millions struggles to support far fewer residents. The decay of smaller towns, abandonment of schools and services, and fraying social safety nets are presented as symptoms of demographic collapse. Economically, the aging population and shrinking workforce invert the traditional support pyramid. Fewer young people must sustain an increasing number of retirees. This imbalance threatens pension systems, healthcare funding, and public safety services. The podcast explains that Social Security and public health are effectively a Ponzi scheme reliant on a stable or growing labor force, which fertility decline undermines. Innovation and economic growth face risks as well. A larger, younger population not only produces more innovators, but also creates demand for new products and technologies, thereby accelerating progress. As populations age and shrink, both innovation and consumption slow, potentially leading to stagnation. The rise of AI and automation complicates this picture, offering some compensatory mechanisms, but also disrupting traditional employment patterns, especially in sectors historically employing women. A significant portion of the conversation deals with the tension between fertility and gender egalitarianism. Many recognize that low fertility correlates with high female education, labor force participation, and gender equality, albeit these correlations are complex and not uniformly causal. The speakers stress that fertility decline should not be viewed simplistically as a consequence of feminism or careerism, but rather as part of broader cultural shifts including delayed pairing, altered male-female relationship dynamics, and changing individual aspirations. The challenge of reconciling the desire for gender equality with societal needs for sustainable fertility is acute. Some express hope that new feminist ideologies can emerge that support family formation without reversing women's rights or autonomy. Nevertheless, entrenched cultural narratives portraying motherhood as incompatible with personal identity and career remain powerful deterrents. Coupling patterns and the timing of family formation emerge as central to understanding fertility decline. The experts detail how age-related biological constraints intersect with social trends of delayed marriage and childbearing. Data show the probability of ever becoming a mother declines steeply after age 27 to 30. Yet many people postpone family formation into their mid-30s and beyond, often due to career, education, or perceived economic insecurity. The vitality curve concept is introduced, illustrating that as the average age of motherhood shifts right and the distribution flattens, the likelihood of partners being simultaneously ready to start families diminishes. This delay reduces birth rates since biological fertility windows are finite. Moreover, mismatches in male and female expectations, fears about the risks of early parenthood, and shifting norms around independence, travel, and self-actualization complicate couple formation. The dialogue acknowledges that the current dating and mating landscape makes serious commitment and family planning more challenging than in past generations. While economic barriers such as housing affordability, childcare costs, and stagnating wages are commonly cited reasons for low fertility, the discussion stresses that economics alone do not fully explain the trend. Counterexamples abound, such as Japan, where birth rates remain very low despite low interest rates and subsidized housing. Cultural standards around family size, maternal care, and childrearing have also escalated dramatically. Parenting today is often perceived as a high-cost, high-investment endeavor involving expensive consumer goods, meticulous childcare, and legal scrutiny, e.g., child protective services and occupancy restrictions. This cultural inflation shapes demand curves for family formation, effectively pricing out many from having larger or earlier families within mainstream society. The speakers deploy a blueberry problem, analogy showing how social norms shift what is perceived as essential in childrearing, intensifying the cost and complexity beyond pure material measures. The panel debates the relationship between fertility, happiness, and meaningfulness. While parenthood is not universally associated with increased moment-to-moment happiness, especially during early childhood, intentional fertility correlates strongly with life satisfaction, reduced depression, and long-term emotional well-being in most studies. There is recognition of the short-term challenges, particularly for mothers in societies with limited childcare support. Nonetheless, participants strongly argue that meaning derived from family life surpasses transient hedonic measures. In parallel, the role of technology such as AI and emerging reproductive technologies is acknowledged as both a potential salve for loneliness and a disruptive force reshaping human relationships and societal support mechanisms. The episode touches on the cultural and political difficulties surrounding fertility discourse, especially online. Pronatalist advocacy is often mischaracterized as misogynistic or aligned with reactionary ideologies, causing many to avoid or resist the topic. The fear that supporting fertility necessarily means restricting women's rights or forcing traditional gender roles is widespread. The guests emphasize their pan-natalist stance, supporting people to have children if and when they want, without coercion. They critique both fringes, those blocking fertility discussions and those promoting regeneration narratives that ignore or marginalize individual autonomy. Additionally, they note how misperceptions about fertility, such as misunderstanding biological clocks or IVF guarantees, compound uninformed choices and societal ambivalence. Public policy responses are canvassed, including cash incentives, family benefits, marriage bonuses, and housing reforms. The podcast highlights the sheer scale of investment required. Estimates suggest spending upwards of several % of GDP sustainably to meaningfully boost birth rates. However, cash alone is insufficient. Policies that reduce marriage penalties in tax systems, improve housing supply, expand accessible childcare, and compress educational timelines to allow earlier family formation may be more impactful. Education on fertility awareness and timely family planning emerges as a promising, cost-effective intervention. Studies show that providing people with realistic information about fertility decline can shift intentions and behavior, especially when combined with supportive social attitudes. The role of community, cultural narratives, and status is discussed at length, elevating motherhood and family as accessible, positive life choices rather than depictions of sacrifice or loss could shift societal norms and encourage family formation. At its foundation, the argument is made that long-term pair bonding is the prerequisite for fertility. Social instability, mismatched expectations, and prolonged singlehood contribute decisively to falling birth rates. The panel exhorts earlier and intentional relationship formation, coupled with clear communication about family desires, as vital steps toward reversing decline. They describe how contemporary dating culture and social fragmentation lengthen the path to marriage and family. Technological advances, including IVF and nascent approaches like in vitro gametogenesis, offer potential remedies to some biological constraints. Yet these interventions face limitations in cost, accessibility, and cultural acceptance. Medical improvements, such as treating recurrent miscarriages, are recognized as underutilized opportunities to increase successful pregnancies. However, these advancements address downstream factors and cannot substitute for societal and behavioral changes affecting couple formation and timing. The speakers consider how modern lifestyle choices and identity models shape fertility. For many young women, travel and personal freedom have become core elements of self-definition, leading some to see parenthood as incompatible with maintaining self and career ambitions. The cultural valorization of youth, individualism, and career success often conflicts with motherhood's traditional narrative, inducing fear of identity loss and social penalties. The podcast underscores the absence of aspirational family models in mainstream media and social discourse. Conversely, those involved in family life express how parenting enriches identity, purpose, and social connection, though these benefits are often invisible or undervalued in wider society. Discussions around domestic labor highlight persistent asymmetries. Women often undertake more housework and childcare, partly due to higher personal standards rather than merely male resistance or incompetence. While male participation has increased historically, gendered expectations and emotional labor remain skewed. The conversation critiques the rise of tools that exacerbate resentment rather than foster cooperation, such as games designed to highlight unequal divisions of labor. The speakers argue for recognizing and elevating the status of parenting and family care work as vital societal contributions, undermined by modern metrics that prioritize easily measurable economic productivity. Status signals and contagion effects play significant roles in fertility choices. People's behaviors align with those in their social networks, meaning the rise of childlessness or delayed parenting can be self-reinforcing. Expanding pronatalist cultural narratives and role models, including in popular media, religious institutions, and peer groups, could curb fertility decline. Some examples cited include religious communities with high fertility and tight-knit social support systems. The idea of instituting cultural incentives, such as motherhood medals or symbolic public recognition, is proposed but met with skepticism regarding effectiveness and acceptability. Government policies can either hinder or facilitate family formation. Present tax systems often penalize marriage or dual-earner couples, inadvertently discouraging family stability. Fiscal investment in family support may be necessary but politically challenging. Yet looming demographic challenges compel public dialogue on restructuring welfare, education, and housing to accommodate and encourage sustainable families. The speakers acknowledge political resistance and the difficulty of implementing large-scale reforms while stressing the necessity of cultural change alongside policy. The podcast returns to the theme of personal agency amid structural constraints. Although systemic factors play decisive roles, individual awareness, timely decisions, and community support influence fertility outcomes significantly. Educational interventions and honest conversations about biological realities aim to reduce regret and misinformation. Encouragement to question prevailing lifestyle narratives and reassess happiness sources resonates as a path forward. The participants stress that not everyone must have children, but emphasize minimizing involuntary childlessness and supporting those who desire families in realizing that wish. Beyond immediate demographic and economic concerns, the panel situates fertility decline in a broader context of humanity's future diversity and resilience. They worry about monocultures emerging from demographic collapses confined to particular populations, which could imperil adaptability to environmental or societal shifts. Ultimately, sustaining a diverse, innovative, and prosperous human civilization requires reversing or managing fertility decline effectively, preserving cultural heterogeneity and generational renewal. The conversation acknowledges profound uncertainty about future trajectories while advocating optimism through cultural revitalization, scientific advancement, and responsible action.